You've more than likely heard of the formula for change. Have you ever sat down with anybody or yourself and asked yourself the question, what are the things that I'm resistant to changing? In our chat with Coach Craig, he shares some strategies on how you can do that. He shares how interesting it is that those resistance to change often show up in our business. Let's have a chat with Coach Craig. Craig, tell me, why did you become a business coach?
Why did I become a coach? I was absolutely sick and tired of the corporate grind. I deliberately had gone into a corporate atmosphere because my family had always had small businesses. That's probably the better place to start. Growing up in small business, I realised what it did to the family unit. It was a business-owned family, not a family-owned business. And I didn't enjoy that at all. And no family holidays. There seemed to be always a pressure and a stress in the household. Didn't like that at all. So I went the corporate route, which is obviously the much better way to go. And it took me a good 15 years to figure out. So that was a really poor choice. But I felt because I'd done some research and I'd seen through self-development what coaching could provide. When the time came and I was absolutely fed up with companies saying one thing and doing another, ruining their teams, not supporting people, not growing people, I just looked forward down the road and thought there's no way that I want to spend the rest of my professional career doing that. So what do? And it was almost like actually it culminated in me going through a franchise expo, and I'd spotted Action Coach about 7 years prior, ran into Brad Sugars about 5 times in 6 weeks. No design, was just all by coincidence. But I've been following the company for some period of time and working through this expo after just throwing my job in. I've never, ever left a job without having something to go to. And so I did that, walked down to this franchise expo and saw all these multi-million dollar franchises that I was going to have to go into if I wanted to do business for at the right time the first time. And I was feeling a bit distraught. Maybe I'd give the boss a call and say, maybe I was a bit out of line about that, what I said about your mother. And then walked around the corner and saw this big sign saying, well, at that stage, Action International. And everything was like, came into focus in one moment. I thought, that's it. That's what I want to do. I want to help people to be better in business through not repeating the mistakes that my family had made. It was the easiest sale that ever made. The guy behind the counter couldn't believe his luck. I just walked up and said, I'm in. And within 2 weeks, I was working within a coaching unit franchise. And within 6 months, I bought my license and I started coaching.
You say it's not by design, but maybe it is. Maybe it's something greater than just a coincidence.
Absolutely. There's been 3 big decisions that I've made in my life. One was meeting my wife. One was deciding to go overseas when I had the opportunity to do so professionally. And the other one was choosing my career as a coach. I mean, you just have to look at the statistics. I had about 25 different jobs before I'd become a coach. Now I've done the same thing for 18 years in a row. So it doesn't take a genius to figure out I was actually on purpose that day, and I'd done the right things for the right reasons without any clue about what I was doing. But yeah, I completely agree that, and most of the people that I meet in coaching are very much the same way. We're built into a calling, not a career or a job. Coaching is not something you do; it's something you be. So I just found my groove and haven't looked back since. So.
And Craig, with all the businesses that you've worked with over those years, what's the one thing, the one winning strategy that gets the best results that you've seen?
The one winning strategy. Oh gosh, look, I'd probably say that there's a favourite 12 that works, but if there's a strategy that I would say echoes every single time with a business owner, it's and I've just had this conversation this afternoon with an upcoming coach. It's about alignment, Michelle. If someone is, most business owners are not aligned to the reason they went into business in the first place. I mean, there's a typical sort of family generational thing where that's what mum and dad did, so this is what I'm going to do. There's the I bought the thing without knowing what it was all about, or I was really good at doing something and the business just formed around me, almost like a tumor. But they're not necessarily aligned to their purpose. Their personal purpose has to align to what the business is doing. When that's out of whack, they're never truly on target. So, I mean, I can guess what you're asking for is a deliberate killer strategy that works every time in business. I don't believe it comes down to that. When a business is being run on purpose with that suits who the business owner is, it's just bound for success. It doesn't matter how many hours they work. It doesn't matter how the business performs. It will be on purpose, and eventually it'll find its groove and its rhythm, and it'll be successful. There's tactical things that we do every day and every week within businesses, but that's the number one strategy that I find is critical to the success of the business.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so I want to talk about that. And so tell me how a business owner can find that purpose for their business.
It takes a lot of time. In some cases, it takes a lot more time than others. We've got a strategy that we use within Action Coach that it's at least 4 hours. And it sounds short when you think about it. You get your whole life's purpose developed in 4 hours, but it's a very deliberate strategy looking at the things that are going wrong in the business to start with. What's displeasing you? Because that's usually the best place to start. What's going wrong? Make a good list of that. And you've got the opposite must be what goes right. Okay. But if we're smart about that alignment process, we look through the personal goals, we look through the business goals that we've got. We deal a lot with mindset in that alignment session. And then, of course, at the other end of it, we've got a plan, a strategy and a plan that's built on the original personal goals. So much like the whole good, bad thing, if you do a ledger of what you don't want, you've got a pretty good idea of what you do want. And so that alignment strategy is over 2 weeks, we'll culminate that into 4 or 5 hours and sit down with a business owner and ask them, not just what do you want, like a superannuation strategy. It's more a case of not why do you want it, but what's the purpose of you having that, doing that, going there. And if someone can invest a bit of time and be patient enough in that process with their coach, they can usually trip across 2 or 3 really good drivers that explains their purpose. And if you don't get absolute clarity, you generally get massive gains in clarity within that session. Once that's done, it's just a matter of every 3 months just rechecking that. And over the years that I've been coaching, I reckon you get it pretty much nailed, 50, 60% in the first time that you do it. And then the next 2 or 3 quarters after that, in ensuing quarters, you get a bit of a directional change, maybe 2 or 3 degrees left or right. But over about the first year of coaching, people can get a really good understanding of not just what they're doing, because they are technically proficient already. They know what they're doing. They should know why they're doing it. And sometimes that's how you fall out of love. You get dejected, you get unfocused, makes you a bad leader, a poor manager, usually makes you a pretty poor partner at home as well, which is part of what I experienced as a kid. So reverse all of that, get absolute clarity on it. And within the first 9 to 12 months of being coached, and genuinely rocking up to answer that question, what's the purpose of us doing this? They can uncover that purpose, and all of a sudden you're aligned, or all of a sudden over 12 months. Sometimes it takes longer. Sometimes it's relatively quick. And on very rare occasions, someone's very clear about what they want to do and where they want to go. They're just not sure what to go about, how to go about doing it. Well, we can help that too, because it's obviously a shorter journey.
So business owners can get a coach to. Yeah, so business owners can get a coach to do this alignment process. But I want you to, if you can, walk me through what's the first step of this alignment process, so someone can start thinking about this if they're listening to this interview.
Yeah, look, it just get some clarity on some really, I start with 2 simple questions. What makes you happy? What makes you sad? And if I'm doing a phone call with someone, I'll ask them that question. And it's uncanny how many times you'll ask that question and someone has to really, really think hard about the things that make them happy and the things that make them sad. It sounds simplistic, but you try answering that for yourself right now, articulating with an adult journey when you're not a kid anymore, because it's pretty easy when you're a kid. It's food, fun, and friends, and that's becomes pretty simple. As an adult, you start thinking, what does genuinely make me happy? And that's a tough list for people to write. So that piques the interest a little bit. That then turns into an exercise that I use with my clients called it's basically called the 10 things exercise. Tell me 10 things you want to have, 10 things you want to do, 10 places you want to go, and 10 people you'd like to meet. It's really simple exercise, but in the time that I've been coaching, in almost 2 decades worth of coaching, you can count on one hand with no fingers on it the amount of people who've been able to complete that list in a specified period of time. Not in 2 hours. I'll give them 2 days, 2 weeks, and people cannot complete a list of 10 in that area, which sounds kind of sad, but it's actually quite exciting. that they have clarity on, actually, I don't know how to answer these questions and they're really simple. Maybe I should stop and think about this more clearly. The first three are pragmatic. Where do you want to go? What do you want to have? What would you like to do? Yeah. The fourth one is generally characteristic, not generally, it's specifically characteristic. So we are generally attracted to the people who are like us or who we would like to be. And so if you write down a list of who you'd like to have come to dinner and you analyze the great characteristics of that group of people, you'll probably get a fair indication about what you want to be like. And so as a leader, you're looking for three characteristics to shine through, and that's what they want to be as a leader. And with a list, you've got a very, very clear, practical list of things to tick off. I usually put a 10-year boundary around that list because it's usually quite big. And so, right, well, there you go. If that's your lifestyle for the next 10 years, that's who you want to be, and that's what you want to do, go and have. Let's get cracking. Let's make the business actually provide this. So that takes care of the first portion of that alignment process, which is your personal goals. From there, it's pretty easy. You just work out what the business has to do to go get it.
Great. I love it. So can you give me an example of a client where you've actually done this alignment? And obviously you do it with every client, but give me a story about a client where you've had some success and that's kind of the guiding kind of light for them.
Yeah. Look, important to note that in most cases, this is a longer process. So I'll recheck that 2 or 3 times, as I said before, over the course of the first year. But I've got clients that regularly come up to me who've done this exercise 3, 5, 8, 10 years ago, and will tell me, look, when we wrote it down, I'd called you an idiot, and there was no way we were going to get that done, and there it is in the driveway. Or there's the house that we designed. And one couple who got super focused, and this was a 75-year-old business that had just barely paid the bills for the families. 2 or 3 generations of family had worked this business. It had survived and done a good job. Within 3 years, that business was able to provide the boat, the house, the holidays, and the leverage and time that family needed to be the solid family unit that it needed to be. They wanted more time with their kids. Their kids were going rancid because they weren't spending any time with them. It bought the boat, it bought the car, and it parked those items in a driveway of a house that they'd always dreamed of having. I could actually say there's dozens of opportunities to explain that, or dozens of stories very similar to that. But it's not about the toys. It generally comes down to the time that they want with their families, which suits my mantra directly. If you remember what I said about not having a business-owned family rather than a family-owned business, it reverses that principle. That's what coaching does. It makes things work so they can buy their time back. And it's a family holiday that I get most excited about. I've got a great story on that if you want to hear about it later.
I do. And so business owners come to you with usually one of kind of 3 challenges. Time, you just mentioned that. They're so busy working in their business. They don't take time to step back and work on their business to really think about where they're going and why they're doing. That 10 things is a great example of that. Team, usually they don't have a team around them, a strong team that can build the business so that they can have the lifestyle, as in the business owner can have the lifestyle that they've always dreamed of. That's why we're in business. And money, they're usually, struggling with cash flow, trying to pay the bills, and it's a bit of a vicious cycle. So what do you find is the common thing that most business owners come to you with? Yeah. And then how do you overcome that?
Well, it's you probably wouldn't expect a straight answer from me. So I'll keep honouring that commitment. I explain those trio, and that's generally every problem in business is tied up into one of those 3, or their fourth one. The fourth one is destination, which we just talked about. When you become aligned to where you're headed, then that road becomes so much simpler. I wouldn't suggest it's easier. It's usually harder work, right? But if you're clear on the destination, you know why you're doing things in business, it makes it a lot simpler. But then there's those 3 practical, and I explain it like a bar stool, right? You got your time, your money, and, well, the delivery is due to your team. So time, team, and money. That's a 3-legged stool at a bar. Now, if one of those things is out of kilter, you've got a very unstable platform to be sitting on. It doesn't make you feel comfortable at all. If one of them cracks, you're basically sitting on your backside. And the reason I explain it as a 3-legged stool is because they're all interrelated. It really isn't a time or a money or a team issue. It's all of them. If you don't have the team right, then you don't have your time because you're doing all the work. If you do have the team, quite often if it's not systemized and working well, then you're paying too much money and you don't have the money. And of course, they're all interrelated. So I would suggest the one that troubles them most is not having enough money to drive the business. And that can sometimes come down to goal setting and the efficiencies that we talk about in the first, say, 6 weeks of coaching. We identify all those black holes within the business, plug those gaps, and we get working on things straight away. We don't just talk about dreams. It's got to be, let's have some meat on your plate while you wait for those dreams to come true. So money is probably one that troubles them most, but it's the other two that challenge them most. In other words, if you fix your issues in how to manage team members and how to lead people properly rather than just demanding a service from them, the world's changed a lot in terms of employment and recruitment and training. If a small business, which can add tons of development and benefit to a new team member, we're 60% of Australia's GDP. So we do really great work. But if you as a leader can't add benefit, then that person's going to go to the surest, shadiest tree they can get, and they'll go with those benefits from someone else. So team is usually one that is most mysterious to business owners. If that's a long, long way of answering your short question. Money's what they want, but what they've got to do is become a great leader, and that gets them their time back as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure does. So can you tell me about a client that you've worked with? What was their initial challenge?
Yeah, there's one person who, again, there's dozens of stories, but I guess something, a sort of an echo of what we just spoken about. In fact, this person had worked out. They had a really, really strong driver, and their purpose was 100% clear from day one. And they started coaching with me before they actually launched their business. That's how keen they were. So for 12 months before they started their business, they wanted to know everything in and out. And this guy used to call me at all hours of the day. Well, he wasn't coaching per se. He just came to a good couple of day retreat that we did, and we explained the process of that. And then it went through a once a month, one afternoon per month kind of journey. We call it Action Club back in those days, but it forms a part of one of our core services with an action coach. So he was a part-timer and didn't have a business to go to. He did all this education before he started the business. And then he just bugged me for about a year or so after that. What should I do here? When do I do that? He knew his purpose before he even started the business. So, of course, it launched pretty quickly, and he had all his ducks in a row, and it went gangbusters, crazy. So he found himself in a 90-hour week with 2 small kids and more business than he can handle. To this day, 12, 13 years later, he still doesn't have to market because business just comes at him. He's purpose-driven and does great work. But what we had to get to the point of after his 90-hour weeks were starting to tick around, and his wife was calling me and saying, "What have you done? Thanks a lot, pal. Can you coach him out of this one?" Andrew is a particularly he's like a dog with a bone. When he gets it into his mindset that he's going to fix something, he fixes it. And I said, "Well, why do you think is attributing to this 90-hour week? Let's be honest. You're only doing that because you're choosing to do it. So how do we get you out of that? Time, team, and money. If you want your time back, you're going to have to have better team members, and that meant better systems." And again, to this day, systems we wrote 12, 13 years ago are being used by, and now I'm coaching his team. I've got 4 young people who are almost like an echo of him. He would work a total of 6 to 8 hours a month.
Wow.
If he's lucky. He's a pain in the neck. He goes away for weekends and comes back with big dreams and tells the team, "Here's what we're going to do next." And it just continues to grow. Yeah.
What sort of business?
But that process, by the way, the 90 hours down to about, we took him from 90 hours to 10 hours a week. And we did that in the space of 5 months.
Wow. What sort of business is he in?
Well, that's the even better part, right? So we talk about, when in coaching, we talk about changing lives. And then my kids release me to do the job that I do. If I ever have to leave the house, they're quite happy as a business partner because they know that they're partnering with me in changing people's lives. This business is in allied health, which is probably the worst naming possible for an industry. They basically save lives, right? So when you spend time with an allied health professional, you get a better chance at any of the chronic illnesses that affect our society today: cardiac problems, motor neurone diseases, all sorts of things. So it's one of the most proudest things that I've got as a coach, on my record, is that we've built a business now that's 13 years old. It's got 20 young people working within it, and there's about 11 Australians per year walking around, because every time you spend a half an hour with one of these people, you get a healthy life year attached to it. So for every 13 appointments that these people do, they save a healthy life year. If you add up what we've done, there's 11 Australians walking around today this year as a result of this team doing their work. So they don't just change lives, they save them. And it's a pretty cool business to be a part of, to tell you the truth.
Yeah. Wow, that's incredible. Okay, so he was working 90 hours a week. What were some of the things that you helped him put into place to pull back those hours so he could spend more time with his family and create the life that he now has today?
It was a pretty look. At the end of the day, it really comes down to the decision. You know, the tactics were already there, the systems were already written. He wasn't trusting himself to be the leader that he needed to be. He was sort of resisting the need to go back into that. So, at the end of the day, he'd actually written all the systems to bring people on board. We had to get good at a couple of things. First of all, we had to go and recruit some people to go and do the work that he was doing. But the systems for those people, and what it meant was, it took us a while to find the right ones. But when we found them, we were able to plug them in straight away. So we spent a good 2 months in recruitment, finding the right kind of people to do what it was that he needed to do. But if I'm honest, the decision, you know, they often say that it's not the decision that's hard to make, it's deciding to decide. You know what the decision is. The decision's a really simple thing to do, but it's deciding to decide. And that's what he did when his wife gave me a phone call and said, look, we got to work this out because it's not working for us as a family. And I agreed. You know, it was something I'd been talking about with him for a while. After that decision was made, it was a really clear-cut aspect. Go find the people, plug them into the systems, be a better leader than a manager, right? So ask good questions and figure out where the gaps are. And then we got the team to start writing those systems with or for him. And then, look, he's a pretty inspirational guy. So we got these people up to speed very quickly. And then the courageous decision to stand back from the business was taken about 3 months later. So within 5 months, he was down to about 10 hours a week.
That's amazing. I love that.
It sounds simple when you say it fast.
Yeah. The big BFO for me, the blinding flash of the obvious, is make the decision and then it just happens, right? Like just the decision to...
Yeah, it's a famous phrase that I've wrestled with for years, but it's never truer than in business. It's not the decision that's hard to make. It's deciding to decide on that decision, really being convicted about the decision you have to make in business. That generally is what drives it. Once someone is convicted about that, there's pretty much no stopping it. Having said that, you do have to have good foundations and framework to work with. So there's a bit of the practical, not just the emotional or spiritual stuff. You've got to be practically prepared. He was well prepared with the systems, just wasn't using them. The good news, he was banking great coin, but he just didn't have a team to go and leverage himself out of the business. He now knows how to do that so well that he could easily go away in fact, he does with his business partner, who's also ingrained in the business. They spend a good 12 weeks of the year traveling around Australia. They've been to some incredible places in Australia because their families love traveling overland. And the business gets run by kids in their mid to late 20s. And probably does better when he's not there than it does when he is.
And what's his next big dream?
Well, the company itself is centred on allied health and health services to the rural community. He has now got himself out of the whack. When he first got to the point where he was, 10 hours a week, he thought, one clinic, nice little area. I've got my life the way I wanted. Well, that was 13 clinics ago. He wants to be the largest allied health provider in the region, not just in Australia, but in the region. So, that's finding a Kiwi who can speak the right language and send the message there, and also across the rest of the Asia Pac region. So they've got some big goals, and now they've got the team to go do it.
And how nice and rewarding for you to be able to work with such a purpose-led organisation that's having an impact and ultimately saving lives, like you said.
Well, actually, another little insight to that is that the team is now ingrained in that goal. So the goal, just to reiterate what I was meant there, regionally, what that means is 100 people per year owe their lives to have their lives are safe. We're 50 figurative lives. That was the original target. Now it's 100. So, and when we've got such good reporting and such good measurement in that business that we can now take a young technician, a young EP or physio, and each year when we do an offsite with these guys, they open up their envelopes and they find out what their numbers are, right? So as a result of your efforts this year, this is how he became such a great manager and leader. There's these gold envelopes sitting on the table in front of everyone. They know what happens. We call this offsite the muster. and all these young kids come from all over Australia, and they come to sit in front of them is an envelope which tells them how many hours they've worked, how many lives they've contributed to saving this year. You've never seen a more inspired, relevant team, which is why, you can say, well, can't get Generation Ys or millennials to work. I think it's us misunderstanding what our market's like. These guys are more inspirational and inspired than you'll ever see any other business owner that I've met. So it's pretty cool place.
So Craig, you know that example of that business, that was very clear on what their purpose was. And you can see the success, obviously, that they're having as a result of that with your support. Tell me, you've mentioned the strategy or the steps, stepping back into something practical. It's aligning that vision with the practical steps that you need to take. You talked about creating a list of what I like and what I don't like. You talked about the 10 things exercise, which sounds like lots of fun. What else can I do to get really clear on that purpose?
It's a good question. I think if you maybe behind or before all that's because that's probably when you engage a coach, and if you want me to chase that up with anyone, I can do so. But before that, do a Benjamin Franklin ledger. The simplest version of that is getting clear about what you don't like. And we've got a formula with an action coach it's pretty mathematical when you think about it, but it's the basis of every great change that happens in a life or a business. It's called the formula for change, and it talks about dissatisfaction times by vision. Adding to that some actions or some first steps. All of that must be greater than our resistance to change, because as humans, we're generally very resistant to doing anything different. In most businesses that we walk into, even if they've been open enough to engage a coach in the first place, well, I'll have a chat to you. That's usually where it starts. I'll have a chat to you, but I'm going to promise anything. I don't want to buy anything. I don't want you to sell me anything. That's cool. I mean, we're quite happy to do that. And investing, in fact, that'd be the first step. Invest 90 minutes into asking someone completely objectively who's actually quite talented in the area and sees lots of businesses from the inside out. Go and sit down with a coach. Just ask some objective questions. But this formula is at play as soon as you do that. So let's measure your dissatisfaction and your vision. Let's measure what sort of actions you're taking. And let's find out a little bit about what resistance you have to change. What are the most famous words in business? That's not the way we do things here, or that's the way we've always done it. They're the two things that bring a business undone. You can't expect to go 2 or 3 decades and not have the market, the business, the industry that you're in change. I mean, look what's happening in almost any business in the world today. I work with some software developers in the automotive space, and there's massive amounts of change happening in that area right now. So if a mechanic thinks that he can get away with servicing cars now, and the same was in 5 years, the same way he's doing it now, he's kidding himself. In Australia alone, there's 30,000 workshops that won't, the majority of which, 2/3 of which will not make it through that change era. The ones who will, are the ones who are willing to sit down and do things differently. So, long story short, or long story long, invest some time into thinking about things differently. And just do a Ben Franklin ledger. What do I like? What don't I like? Because that will give you a pretty good indication. Again, the things that you fear or don't like the most, the things you're avoiding. If you flip that over, the things that you do like is probably a good indication about what you need to go and fix in your business. But here's the thing. You won't do it. We just won't do it because we're resistant to change. You're going to need to have a person who's like a coach, who's an unreasonable friend, and is going to follow you up and be nice enough, actually care about you enough to say, you're not going to do that. So I'm going to watch you. I'm going to make sure you do those sit-ups. No one likes the sit-ups, but everyone loves the six-pack.
You just made a great point. I want to just reiterate that. You said that when you do that formula, you see what the resistance to change is, have a look at your business, and that's often what's falling down and what you need to fix. So, and you won't do it on your own, more than likely. So get a coach to help you or someone to help you.
That's a magical part about coaching, is because I'm in the middle of something, I can see it. If I could just ask 2 or 3 straight questions, and a business owner will tell me what the answer is, right? So then it's not that they don't know what the issues are. It's that they're not doing anything about the issues. And so it's as simple as that. It doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. Everyone knows what a good health plan is like. Everyone knows that cigarettes aren't healthy for them. Everyone knows that we shouldn't be drinking too much on the weekend. We all know these things, but knowing is not doing. And if we know more about something, it almost makes it illogical that we wouldn't do something about that. So the coach is there to make sure you do it. It's as simple as that. I'm not very popular. I've got some very choice names that I'm called in the businesses that I work in, but he may be a insert expletive here, but he's ours. He's ours, and he makes us do stuff, and that's why I think I've still got the first client that I ever signed as an action coach. So he's been with me 17 and a half years now, and you don't get that kind of loyalty and retention from clients unless you're adding value. It's as simple as that. So pretty simple story.
Brilliant. Love it. Thank you, Craig. Okay, 3 questions for you. What's your favourite business book?
My favourite business book, or I think Mr. Sugars might be disappointed about this one, but my favourite business book is Selling the Invisible by Harry Beckwith.
Love it. Question number 2, who's been the best mentor coach for you?
Mr. Sugars will be quite happy about this one. I reckon, I hope he doesn't actually see this interview, but I'd have to say he's still, after all of these years, after all the corporate speakers and people I've seen on stage, Brad would have to be in the top 2 or 3 speakers. And because of that, also a close mentor to what we do as coaches. Or for me personally, he's probably had the biggest influence over not just my coaching career, but my career in general. He's been an awesome knowledge base and leader for me to follow. Yeah, Brad.
Yeah, not surprising. That is a common answer that I get when I ask that question, and our guests are not paid to answer with that question.
Absolutely.
Question number 3, Craig. What's the best piece of business advice that you ever received?
Oh, that's a great question. Best piece of business advice. It's actually. It sounds like it's a bit cruel and tardy, but it's actually a really powerful phrase. Love everyone, trust no one. And what the speaker at the time was trying to figure out is, from a coaching perspective, the best business advice is we commonly see things the way we see them. When I see the world as it is, I see the world as I am. And so love everyone, trust no one basically means go and get your own information. Don't just trust what you see. Go and find it out for yourself, because that's what I've found to be the biggest issue in business. Trusting that people have got it in hand when sometimes they don't. And it's not deliberate. It's not Machiavellian. It's just that you're going to go and get the facts and the figures to back up what your emotion is. Don't be cocky. Don't be cautious. Go and find out the facts. It's been a really good mainstay of my coaching career and my business career. Love everyone, trust no one.
I love that. I'm going to keep that one. Thank you, Craig. Appreciate you spending some time with me today.
Always a pleasure, Michelle. Thanks for having me.
Michelle Adams, your host here. Hats off to you for committing to your learning by listening to this podcast. And if you'd like some help implementing some of these strategies, then click the link in the description to find your local action coach. They can help you put these strategies into action and take your business and your life to the next level. In the meantime, like and subscribe so that you're the first to get our next episode. We'll see you soon.